Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 110. This episode is for anyone who's ever thought to themselves, I think I want to start a nonprofit, but what the hell do I do? And of course, I have no lived experience in this arena, so I've brought on an expert, and I'm interviewing today Sierra Nicholls of CSAW. But first, just having some updates. I've got to give you the updates, you know it. Update number 1, all things retreats. There is still some room in both the intermediate and advanced retreats that I'm hosting with Jenny Tufts at Sweet Retreats in Mexico. And this is going to be the last week of January and the first week of February. This is an aerial hoop specific retreat, and it is about creating your own work in addition to learning the amazing sequences that Jenny brings. Retreat number 2. Creatrix 2.0, which is my own retreat here in coastal South Carolina on Edisto Island. And this is for artists and creators who want to learn witchcraft. And that overlapping Venn diagram between witchy folks and artistic creative folks, this is the retreat for you. It is not an aerial retreat, but aerialists are obviously very welcome because that is most of my audience. That retreat is going to be May 13th through the 18th of next year. And the best place to be, if you definitely want to get in on it, is the Patreon, because I'll release it to the Patreon this month in a couple of weeks for 1 week. And then if there's room, I'll release it to the wait list. I'll put the links to all of these things in the show notes. We're in December now. It's fucking freezing outside. I would like to complain to the manager. This is not what I signed up for. I moved to the swamps of South Carolina to escape the bitter cold. But here we are. And traditionally, I enjoy no work December, which can mean something different for anyone who practices it. But basically, it's December, it's cold, we don't want to go outside, we don't want to do things. Now, normally for me, that means no Zoom meetings in the month of December. My circumstances have changed somewhat. I am a full-time caregiver now. The needs of my household are different, and you gotta roll with the punches and make adjustments as needed within your parameters of your value system. And what that means for me is that no work December is going to be the last 2 weeks. Which, as we know, nothing happens during those last 2 weeks of December anyway, so it's going to work out fine. Okay, that's it for updates for me. I am going to now introduce you to our guest for the day. Sierra Nicholls grew up doing gymnastics in Montana, fell in love with standing on her hands. She's attended professional circus school at Circus, Maine, and Circadium School of Contemporary Circus, graduating in 2021 with a double major in hand-to-hand and handstands and a minor in foot juggling. I did not know that was a thing, but it's totally a thing. She founded CSAW, connecting circus students around the world, in 2018 with the mission of making information and resources about international circus schools more accessible. CSAW has gone on to provide funding and opportunities for circus artists of color in an effort to address and work against systemic racism in the circus community. She's also a full-time circus performer and co-founder of a brand new contemporary circus company, Full Out Formula. I know we're fresh off the heels of Giving Tuesday, since this episode is dropping on Wednesday, December 3rd. And if you thought that this episode dropping at that time was on purpose, you would be correct. Well, let's get into it. Hi, Sierra. Welcome.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me here.
So, can you please tell me? Can you just give us the spiel for CSAW?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Yeah. Let's hear it.
No, definitely. So CSAW stands for Connecting Circus Students Around the World. It's a nonprofit organization. It's been around since 2018. Yeah, the mission of CSAW is really to increase access and information and resources to circus artists all over the world, and in particular, circus artists who are like beginning their journey or looking for the next step in their journey of like, how do I become a professional circus artist? How is that something that happens? So yeah, it's really there to provide information, to provide resources, and then we also have our grant programs for circus artists of color. So we're really an organization all about resources, all about giving back, and trying to help artists find the pathways right for them, because there are so many different pathways that you can take.
Yes, as I am so fond of saying, there's no plan for you. There's no ladder to climb. There's no career path. It's just a jungle and a machete. So you're handing out machetes.
Yes. I love it. We are.
All right. So my burning question, because I have I have a lot of people that I've worked with, a lot of circus artists, and there's a significant number of them who want to begin a nonprofit. And you can tell I'm leaving all of this in because this is a human conversation. So to me, it seems like just so much work, and that it probably would take a deal of time before it's sustainable, depending on how you're coming at it. So can you tell me, like, why did you decide to create a nonprofit rather than go a different route?
Yeah, definitely. So I started CSAW in 2018, and really it was just like a small little Facebook group and a spreadsheet for a couple of years. We had our ambassador program, which is, student representatives from international schools. And so for the first 2 years, that's all that we did. And it really we weren't anything like official other than it was just a Facebook group. It was a thing that was happening. But then in 2020, when we decided that we wanted to start these grant programs and to kind of grow and expand, it really made a lot of sense to us to go the nonprofit route, in particular because of tax deductible status, because if we were looking for donors, that tax write-off is a huge part of that, especially for like bigger, higher level donors and sponsors and things like that. So that was kind of why I started researching it. I also was very intimidated at first. I was like, I don't know how to make a nonprofit. But 2020, I had a lot of extra time to spend, researching. Oh, why? Yeah. To spend researching and looking into it. And there's something called, it's the 1023-EZ form. So it's an expedited process to become a nonprofit. And in particular, it's for small nonprofits who are just beginning. And it's only for those who are intending to raise or make less than $50,000 a year. And it's a pretty simple, small form. And I think in 2020 in particular, they were sort of expediting the process of like reviewing and approving those. So I applied for the 1023-EZ, which pretty much only required like, you have your mission, you have a few first board members, and then it's meant to really start you with your nonprofit status so that then you can grow and kind of establish all of the things that you need from that point. So it actually only took us, I want to say I completed that form in June of 2020, and I think we received that official nonprofit status at like the beginning of August. So it wasn't sort of the typical like becoming a nonprofit story that I feel like I had heard, or that many people have heard otherwise. Is like usually people say how long it takes to become a nonprofit and that there are so many forms, and all of those things I think are really true if you go with the normal 1023 process. But because we did that expedited process, it was definitely a lot simpler for us. So yeah, I always recommend people look into that if it makes sense for them. I think if you want to start a really like big organization right away, then probably don't do that, because it'll actually get in your way a little bit, not being able to raise more than that $50,000 a year. Right. Yeah. So, but that was the process for us. And really the nonprofit, I had some hesitations too, just from talking with other people in the community about how nonprofits had worked for them in terms of like the board and the executive director and how that relationship can go not well a lot of the time. It's just sort of complicated. Like the board being in a volunteer position was something that I kind of struggled with because I really prefer to be able to pay people for their time and labor. But it did make sense for CSAW in the direction that we were going. It was essentially either that or that we looked into becoming kind of a foundation because we wanted to be a grant giving organization. But becoming a foundation was a little bit more complicated for us and kind of required just more upfront funding or like personal wealth funding that we just didn't have. So the nonprofit route really made the most sense for us there.
The idea of having a board is so bizarre to me. I have no idea. Like I have no basis for comparison. So like how did you choose your board and how many people are on that?
Yeah, definitely. So actually for the first couple of years, and this is part of like being the easy lets you take your time establishing this, which is great. For the first couple of years, we sort of just had like an informal advisory board kind of council, like a group of people that I would talk to and be like, I don't know about this thing. And then they would help out with that. But now we do have an official board. It's 4 people. So we have a vice president. We have 2 treasurers, our co-treasurers, and we have a secretary. And then I'm also on the board currently serving as the acting president of the board while we kind of get all of them, the new board members, onboarded into the organization and sort of ready for their roles. So yeah, currently the board is 5 people. We did have a pretty lengthy like application process for the board. So we put out a call and we had people apply, which was really exciting. It was awesome to see how many people wanted to volunteer their time for CSAW, how many people were excited about that, wanted to be on the board. And our board is having a 3-year term limit. So just to see that people wanted to volunteer their time for CSAW for 3 years kind of made me be like, what? Really? That's so exciting. That's really nice of you. But we also, because of the work that CSAW really primarily does now, like our social justice work and anti-racism work, was really important to us that our board be composed mostly of people of color, because that is the community of people that we are aiming to serve. And so it's really important that our representation looks like on the inside what we want for the outside. So we had applications there. And our board members are really wonderful so far. I think I'm learning a lot about how to sort of serve. I'm technically not the executive director. I'm the founder. And then I'm also the acting board president. We are in the process of, in 2025, that's kind of our big growth moment as an organization. We're going to bring on an executive director for the first time, which I think will be really, really, really awesome for CSAW to have somebody who's more like full-time, paid for their time, to help the organization out. So yeah, right now we've kind of spent this has been 5 months now, sort of getting the board like used to the organization, going through all the historical stuff that's happened in the last 6 years and our relationships with other organizations in the circus community, and then kind of clarifying their roles. But we made the decision to bring on co-treasurers, because our board actually functions a little bit differently. That was part of it, is just I'd talked to so many people about how nonprofit boards sort of classically like actually perpetuate white supremacy and so many problems. Like the board structure can be, the board structure can be so harmful, right? Because a lot of the time people are brought onto a nonprofit board simply because they have power and money. And it makes sense, right? The nonprofit needs money and needs influence. And so the simplest thing is to bring people onto the board who already have that. And so board members frequently donate a large sum to their organization each year, or they bring in, that influence, those connections of people who will donate. And that sort of just naturally means like a lot of nonprofit boards are older white men. And a lot of the time the board members are sort of disconnected from what the organization actually does. They're just sort of like figureheads. They don't really get actually involved with what's going on very much. They just are there for the money and the influence. And so I've sort of seen firsthand by like serving on boards and helping with committees how that can be dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm.
So when CSAW hired like a nonprofit consultant as we were going through this process, because I was just like, I don't want that for us. That scares me. That seems like a way that our organization would go down. And so our board structure is a little bit different. The board members aren't expected or required to donate large sums of money unless they so choose.
Mm-hmm.
But they are expected to sort of volunteer and offer their skill set and their time. So our co-treasurers, for example, are both helping a lot with our fundraiser right now. We are in the middle of our annual crowdfunding campaign, and the co-treasurers are volunteering a lot of time to help out with that, which is amazing. So our board really functions. That nonprofit consultant we worked with, she made an amazing little graph that was like, this is how a normal board works, and this is how the CSAW board works. And that's just kind of what I always think about, is like, we ask for more kind of skill and a little bit more time, honestly, from our board, but we ask for a lot less like money necessarily or influence from them. So that was the direction that we went in to kind of help address some of those things, or to prevent us from becoming one of those nonprofits that has a problematic board.
Yeah, decolonize nonprofit. I love it.
Yes.
Thank you for leading by example.
Oh, yeah. Trying to, for sure.
So you're right in the middle of your fundraiser, and I know it's for your microgrants. Can you talk a little bit more about that and where you are in the process?
Yeah, definitely. So we're raising $24,000 this year. We're doing it on Flipcause, which we have used Indiegogo in the past, but we're using Flipcause this year. There are all sorts of like fun perks associated with the different donation levels. There's like raffle tickets for these amazing raffles, and free private lessons, or, private lessons with the raffle ticket. But you can get one for $10 or 3 for $15. There are all sorts of really great perks this year, which we're lucky that our community wanted to collaborate with us to provide those. But we're raising the $24,000, yes, for our microgrant program. The microgrant program gives $1,000 every single month to a different U.S. circus artist of color. And the microgrants are available for any circus funding related need. So it does not have to be just performing. It's also for teachers, for studio owners, for activists. It's really, as long as you're affiliated with circus, you are eligible to apply if you're a person of color in the circus community. So we're raising funds for that. We're also raising funds just to cover operational costs, things like our website, the form, it's called Zoho Forms, where we host all of our applications, as well as just some of those, trying to hire the executive director next year. We're hoping to raise a little bit of funds for that as well, to just move us forward, to be a more sustainable organization. To have somebody actually on staff, I think, would be huge for CSAW. It would just mean we could do so much more. But yes, this fundraiser is specifically for that. We provide, in the past, we've done tuition grants, which are $5,000 grants specifically for circus education. And we also have our Cannonball grant, which is for new works, full-length works by circus artists of color at Cannonball Festival. It's a really awesome collaboration we've been able to do. And this year we helped host the first ever Black Circus Week with Cannonball Festival as well, which was
where's that?
That's in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Cannonball is part of the Philadelphia Fringe Festival. They're what's called a fringe hub. If you've done like fringe festivals before, you always have hubs. Yeah. So they typically host like 150 to 200 different shows every year. So 2023 was the first year we partnered with them to provide, they call it the CSAW Award for new work by U.S. circus artists of color, which is a really long title. We tend to call it the Cannonball Grant. On our end, we call it the Cannonball Grant. They call it the CSAW Award, but the title doesn't really make sense for the other organizations. So, that was super, super exciting for us, because CSAW is such an online thing. Like most of the resources we provided have always been online, and the grant programs are amazing, but we were really questioning like just impact. I think sometimes with a grant, it can feel like you award the person with the money and then they might follow up, but then you sort of just lose that connection with that person. And so we were talking about, ways to have a bigger impact. And so partnering with Cannonball allowed us to finally do something in person. And that was really exciting. So that grant, which, we've done twice now, is a $5,600 stipend. And you present your work a minimum of 4 times at Cannonball Festival. And they provide the venue, they provide the marketing team, they provide the technical support, they provide photo and video. And it's a really, it's an awesome way for circus artists of color, and it can be a solo show or it can be an ensemble. So last year was a solo show, this year was a duo show. We just partnered to kind of provide that resource for folks, because as so many people in the circus industry know, it's so hard to self-produce your work. It's, if you're making that kind of career transition or choice to make a full-length show, you just need so many resources. And circus in particular, requires more resources oftentimes than other art forms. So that's been a really exciting collaboration we've done with them. But we expanded it because last year when we did that, Cannonball programs, all sorts of different shows throughout the month. And there were a lot of shows from circus artists of color throughout the month, which was amazing. But a lot of the feedback that we got from that process was because everyone was programmed at different times, right? Like some people were beginning of September, some people were end of September. They really didn't get to meet and connect. And that was unfortunate for them. They were like, all of these amazing shows were here and we didn't meet anybody else. So that feedback kind of prompted Black Circus Week, which is a collaboration between actually 4 different organizations, where Cannonball really purposefully decided we are going to schedule a ton of programming from circus artists of color all within the same week, and specifically this year from Black circus artists. So there were shows programmed as part of the festival. There were also workshops, there were panels, there were community only events, and it was just a chance for Black and Indigenous circus artists of color to meet and get to see each other's work, get to talk about what it's like, what is going on for them in their different communities. It was a beautiful thing to be a part of. It's one of my favorite things I ever got to be around, and help create. And that was super exciting. So that was a pretty long-winded answer to your question, but I think the nature of the thing that we first started was the microgrant program in 2020. And so I think our microgrant program is just more well known, which is awesome. But I think people sometimes they just know less about the other programs that we're offering. That being said, we're raising money for the microgrants, but also just to support some of this other programming that's happening for us next year as well.
So talk to me about applications. If someone wanted to apply for either a microgrant or the Cannonball, I already forgot what it's called. The Cannonball grant. Wow,
that's what we call it. Yeah, that's the short name.
Really coming out. Okay. Is all of this easy to find on your website? Because I'd like to include it in the show notes if those links are live.
Yeah, absolutely. So microgrant applications are open from the 1st to the 15th of every month. You can find that on our, yes. Yeah. The microgrants are available, $1,000 grant available every single month. That is on our website. If you go to seesawcircus.org, there's a page for microgrants. It should be pretty easy to find the apply button. It should be at the top.
Yes, it's very easy.
Yay, that's good. Our December microgrant, just to note, is actually for youth only per the request of our selection committee. So that will be 18 and under. But we will launch the microgrant program again next year. It's open 1st to the 15th of every month. The application is meant to be for the microgrant, not super in-depth, not super complicated. You shouldn't have to spend hours and hours on it. Ideally, it should be pretty quick. So those applications 1st to the 15th of every month. The Cannonball grant, they tend to open their applications in April, and they close them in June. So you can keep an eye out around that time frame. The tuition grant, unfortunately, we had to pause for this year. It was sponsored by a pretty big organization the last couple of years, and unfortunately they weren't able to sponsor it again this year. So the tuition grant page, if you visit it, it kind of says like it's on pause for 2024, but check back. We're super hopeful to launch it again in 2025. Historically, that grant, we've opened applications around June and closed them around the end of August so that the funds sort of line up with the timing of the beginning of most school years, that September timeframe. But yeah, if you visit seesawcircus.org, hopefully on the website, all of that information is pretty clear about how to apply. Currently, no programs are open except for the microgrants. But in the spring, summer kind of timeframe, the Cannonball Grant, tuition grant applications would be live again.
Will you send out reminders to your email list? Do you keep an email list? I'm sure you have, because I'm sure I've gotten emails from you, but just for posterity's sake.
Totally. Yes. You can sign up for the mailing list. There's a pop-up on our website.
Okay.
And you can just enter your email through there. And we send notifications for when, especially our bigger grant programs, we'll send out newsletters when those are open.
Well, I love that applicants are accepted all year long. I didn't know, there's no reason for me to look into applying for a microgrant, obviously, but I love that it's not just like, oh no, it's only in April and then you have to wait another year. It's like there's an opportunity every month. And yeah, I love that. It just makes it feels so much more accessible.
Totally. Yeah. Yes. If you forget this month, it's like, that's okay. It's open again next month. Which is helpful, I think. That was a big part of starting the microgrant program was like, when we were in 2020, like when I was thinking about CSAW and what we'd done so far, and just, as I think so many white people were, just belatedly thinking about all of the ways that racism affects everything in the world. One dream I had always had for CSAW was because the question I got the most, bar none, for years, just through the Facebook group and everything, was like, hey, how do I pay for circus school? Like, where are the scholarships? Where are the grants? Where's the funding for circus school? And I just kind of had to always be like, it's not clear. Like, there's just not very many resources out there. And I really researched and tried to find it. And different schools offer different programs, which is great. But it was something I always wanted for CSAW, was to like, what if we started a scholarship program? What if that was something we could do? And that when I was thinking about that in the summer of 2020, I had so many conversations with amazing people in the community, and kind of, it was becoming more clear, like, there are so many barriers to just get to the place where you're even able and ready to apply for a professional circus school. Like, even to just get to that point, it's like there are so many barriers of, cost of where you live. If you don't live close to like a youth circus program or something like that, you might not even be able to sort of train and be ready to apply for circus school. So it was, when we were thinking about offering a scholarship or something like that, it was like, well, is this really kind of addressing the problem we want to address? There's so much elitism in the circus world all of the time too. And it was like, maybe what is really needed actually is just a grant, which is at a smaller level, but is just more available to anyone and isn't only for people like pursuing professional circus education, because it's just not the only way. And it's not the only thing that circus is about. It's like that is such a small part of it, actually. So the microgrant program really came from like a place of wanting the grants to be for circus artists of color at any stage of anything in circus, and not just for that one specific thing. So having the $1,000 every single month also just opens it to people. For immediacy is a big part of that application requirement. Is like, we ideally want the funds to be for something that's happening soon, right? So like, I want to take classes this month, next month, or I'm putting on a show next month, or whatever it is. So by having one grant every single month, it feels like it's just in that way, even though $1,000 is becoming less and less and less. We're really feeling that. Like, I think $1,000 in 2020 was really like way more than it is in 2024. It's a small drop in the bucket, but it's not nothing. And it is like, I was looking at the exact number this morning. I don't remember, but we're close to 40 microgrants awarded to 40 different U.S. circus artists of color.
Amazing.
Doing vastly different things. Which,
and there's no
it's just
age
really
limit
exciting.
or any kind of parameter like that on it. It's like
No,
for
there's
whatever you want to use it for.
Yeah, whatever you want to use it for. Really, it's very, very open that like immediacy is kind of the only thing that is a bigger part of it. Just like if you have a project in June, we ask like don't apply for the January microgrant, right? Like wait until May. Just makes more sense. But yeah.
Okay. Anything else that they should be prepared and have on hand? I'm assuming like a photo and perhaps an artist bio.
Yes. Yeah. If you want to apply for a microgrant, exactly. You're going to want a bio. You're going to want to know why you're applying for the microgrant, a photo, a budget proposal, which does not need to be like super, super in depth. We just want to know like, how are you going to use the $1,000? And like a little bit about kind of yourself and your circus story, whatever it may be, like how you started circus, how you hope for circus to change in the future. It's one of the things we ask as well. Our hope is that the microgrant application should only be an hour, maybe 2 hours if you spend like a long, long time in certain areas. But it's meant to be a quick application. And then we have, for all of our grant programs, we have selection committees composed of BIPOC artists who are paid to review those applications every month. So they have like a rubric and a different sort of criteria for how they evaluate and select. But I think that's all you need to apply. You don't need to prepare too much there.
Might you have an example available through CSAW of a budget proposal? Because most people, like, if they've never made a budget proposal for a show before, they're like, what is that? And what does it look like? Literally, what does it look like? What does the spreadsheet look like so that I can submit what you're looking for? Do you have an example of that I can link for folks in the show notes?
That would be a really great thing to do. That would be an awesome resource. I know in the application itself, we provide like a quick example because we really aren't, for this grant, like we don't require or expect like a really complicated spreadsheet. We're really just like, you're going to use $500 for costumes and you're going to use $500 for lights or something, like the most simple example. But, it would be really awesome to just provide that for people so they could maybe copy and paste a template. That's something that we could do. That would be really good.
Sweet. Hey, look, Ma, I helped.
Thank you.
So I have a question that it's purely for my own morbid curiosity because what I do is very far removed from running a nonprofit. My uncle used to be a CFO of a huge nonprofit. So my knowledge of nonprofit comes from like this towering mountain of like a huge foundation that he was CFO of, and then also experience with like really small grassroots programs. My question to the people who found nonprofits is very rude, but I truly mean it. And it is, are you able to pay yourself for what I'm assuming is an immense amount of consistent hands-on management?
Yeah. Great question. To this point, no. I have, again, like I've served as the title we've always had for me is just founder. But I am performing the duties of an executive director. I am the sole administrator for CSAW right now. I think when we were bringing on the board, we calculated like we've been able to pay me for 33% of my time total. So it's not nothing. I've been able to pay me a tiny, tiny amount. But it is, yes, you're correct. It's an immense amount of work. I spend about 400 hours in a year on CSAW work. Depends on the year. But we were from 2021 until August of 2023. We did bring on an administrator who we were able to pay for 7 hours of work a week. And that was really huge for us to have like a staffed member. It really, really helped the organization a lot. That was no small thing for sure. And her name was Chisamaku. She was excellent. She contributed so much to CSAW. We were actually transitioning her in August of 2023 to become the general director and to take over my role. And we were going to transition to pay her more, and she was going to take leadership. She had a pretty major family emergency, and so had to step away in 2023. And that was a really hard moment. That was like a huge learning moment for me, because really the organization was like mostly just her and I at that point. And when she had to leave, it kind of became like, oh my gosh, I have to do everything for CSAW again. And that was like, yeah, it was really intense for me, because it's been an incredible part of my life. I'm like so grateful for getting to do what I've done, but it hasn't been easy. And it's been a lot of unpaid labor. And as many people know, being a circus artist is already like mostly unpaid labor. So to have another thing in my life that is that has not been necessarily easy for me a lot of the time. So that was sort of the impetus to create a more formal, more sustainable board structure, because it was like, okay, things happen, life happens. If one person steps away from the organization, it can't crumble like this. So, that was the motivation there. And then to also, our big goal is to bring on an executive director and pay them like a salaried position to do this work, because it's just a lot. It requires a lot. I think I feel so lucky for how much CSAW has grown. It's really like surprised me all of the time. I'm like, wow, this thing is like really working and people really need it. And so for that reason, like it super deserves to have a paid, like salaried person who's in charge of it, because it's just too much work to keep up with on a just volunteer basis. So
would you not want to be the executive director?
No, so that is something that like I've talked about a lot, talked about with the board, is that we want the executive director to be a person of color for those same reasons.
Most sense. Yeah.
Yes. Gotcha. And I'm not a person of color. For people listening, if you don't know
I can see her.
Yes, you can see.
Y'all can't see her. We're two white women sitting here.
Yes. Yeah. So for that reason, we want a different executive director. And then also, I'm just kind of transitioning at this moment in my life to try to focus more and more on performing and on my own circus company as well. So I think we really want an executive director who I honestly just feel that I don't have the time, and it would be a shame to not have the time that this organization deserves. So,
let's talk about your company. Tell me more. You have a company. Tell me about the company.
Yes. The company's called Full Out Formula. It was a long process of naming it, as it always is. But it's a contemporary circus company, currently composed of myself and Kevin Flanagan and Liam Bradley, two fellow circus artists who I went to circus school with. We all went to Circadium School of Contemporary Circus in Philadelphia. We made a show. We've been working on the show a long time. We premiered it in November of 2023. It's called I Think It Could Work. When we premiered it.
Title. Oh, that's good.
It's really amazing. It's the title comes from, we had all of these. So Kevin is my partner. Kevin and I travel together, work together. We're a hand-to-hand duo. Mm-hmm. So we're often together. But there was a period of time where we were working on the show and we weren't near Liam. So we were having all of these like Zoom creation kind of things. And the title of the show, it was a drawing that Kevin made, which was just like a proposal for an acrobatic thing we could do together. And he wrote, I think it could work at the bottom of it, and like held it up to the Zoom camera, this thing. And that we looked at it and we were like, that's our show. And so we really committed to that.
I love that.
I think it could work. It's been awesome to work on, for sure.
And so you've already premiered the show, or you're building it now?
Yes, so we premiered a works in progress version in November 2023 at a loft in Chicago. We built it as a works in progress. It was like pay what you can, and we really had people come and watch and wanted feedback. So we got a ton of feedback in that process. It was really great. We went back into creation on the show and then made another version and did it again in March of 2024 in New Hampshire, I believe, at a private school. And then, we had a few other projects and things, but went heavily back into creation July of this year. And made, as is always the case, made a billion changes. The show looks super different now than it did in November of last year. But we went really, really intensely back into the creation process, made a bunch of changes, and then took it on a small tour this year, did it in Chicago again, and then took it to Hub State Circus Festival in Ithaca. They've been around a couple years now, and then brought it to Cannonball Festival after that as well. So we took it on a little tour. So the show, I would say this version of the show feels done to us, which is exciting. It still needs work because things always do, and small changes, but the show is heavily audience participation based. And so every time we do it, it's pretty different. So it's kind of in a place where we'd love to do it, 20 more times and then kind of go back in once we understand a little more about how the show, quote unquote, normally feels, because it's definitely not the same every time we do it.
Okay. I love it. 20 more times. That's a good run.
Yeah.
Let's work in reverse here, because I'd love to ask you, since we're talking about running a circus company, I'm assuming this is not another nonprofit. It's just...
No. Yeah.
Okay. So if you were to give advice to someone who's like, I'm going to make a circus company, which there are hundreds of thousands of those people. So let's give them some advice. What would you tell them not to do?
Oh, not to do. Good question. I don't know. It's so funny because I think I feel really differently about it than I thought I would. And maybe I'll start there and that'll bring me to a not to do. But I actually personally was really resistant to starting a circus company. I think in large part because I have CSAW and I know how much work that CSAW has taken. Yeah. And I was like, I can't do that for another thing. I just can't. There just isn't enough of me. And I was really scared of the amount, again, of unpaid labor that it was going to take. And my dream for myself, post circus school graduation, was to work for other companies. That's really what I wanted, was to just work for other companies for a while, figure out how they're doing it, work under different directors, learn about myself as an artist in that way. And I didn't want to start a circus company. I'm 3 years post-graduation now. I kind of had always hoped that I would start one more 5 or 10 years post-graduation, actually. That was my theoretical plan for myself. Plans never really work out how you think they're going to. But yeah, I was very resistant to it because I was just scared. I was scared of the amount of work it was going to take, the amount of money it was going to take. And those things have been true, to be sure. But and I think a lot of people come to this point where they make a show and then they sort of make a company out of necessity because they're like, well, we have a show and we need to book the show as something other than for us, Kevin, Liam, and Sierra present. Yeah. I think it could work. It's well, we're going to do these fringe festivals and these things. So we kind of need a company. So for us, I would say Full Out Formula isn't we haven't made it a huge project yet. Right? We haven't really gone deep into the process of making a website and making all of these sort of assets that you need. For us, it was well, we absolutely put a ton of time, resources, and money into making the show. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the company, it hasn't been what I was afraid it would be yet. So I guess my advice is kind of start. It's okay. You will,
start small.
Of course, Yeah, start small. Exactly. Right. Start small. Definitely start small. And you're going to learn as you start small. But yeah, I think I'm someone who really wants to feel prepared. And I think it's great to feel prepared when you can. But you might be like more ready or more okay than you think you are. Mm-hmm. And also like it's your company. So it's whatever you want it to be. If you'd like, you know, if you don't want to pour 1,000 unpaid hours into it, like maybe you don't have to. Maybe it can be like a different thing than that. So yeah, I guess I'm not sure what the like don't do part of that is. I guess the don't do part of that is like don't not start somewhere, right? Don't just like hold on to the dream of the thing because you're like, I'm not ready, or like it's going to be too hard, right? Just like
I couldn't agree more. It's great. That's great advice. And I'd like to ask you something similar to the many people who have been thinking about, I think I'll start a nonprofit. What would you say to these folks? What not to do, what to definitely do? First steps.
Yeah. First steps. First steps I would say are research all of the different kinds of organizations that there are. Cause I think a lot of people, don't know about like what other structures exist, but there are all sorts of like co-op structures that organizations run under that aren't necessarily a nonprofit. I think like, especially the United States has a huge focus on this nonprofit thing. And sometimes it doesn't actually make the most sense for what you're trying to do. I think there's like an immediacy and a jump to like, oh, just do the nonprofit thing. And then people sort of belatedly are like, oh, maybe there was actually a different structure that made sense for us. Like maybe you were more of a foundation, or maybe you were more of a co-op led kind of organization, or maybe you aren't a nonprofit. Like maybe you're a for-profit actually. Like I think just asking for help. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's probably what it is. Like, please ask for help as you're in this process. It's like, I don't know. I feel like I read so many articles, and this is why I started CSAW. Is like, I am just someone who really only understands things through conversation with people and through learning from people. I think like I read articles or I watch videos and I get a sense of things, but by talking to somebody that like has been through the process, I feel like that actually gives me the answers that I need a lot of the time. It's like, okay, this is what they know and what they've learned. And yeah, the circus community is ever growing all of the time. And so if you are like interested in starting in particular circus nonprofit, like there are so many people to talk to. There are actually so many of those out there. And I'm sure all of those people have made mistakes. I know that I made a ton of mistakes, and I would love to tell you about them. If you want to know what they are, be like, don't do that. try not that. And yeah, that's
try
like,
not doing that.
Try not doing it like that, at least. But that's kind of like the heart of me as a person, like beyond CSAW, beyond all of it, is just like I really operate from a place of like truly believing that it is our responsibility to leave the world better for those who come next. And so part of that is like, yeah, talking to people that have questions and like helping them along the way from your experience, and I really fundamentally disagree with people who feel that like, because they went through something hard, that means that other people have to also go through that hard thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty irritating conversation to have.
Yeah, it really is. And I've been surprised in a not positive way about how many people feel that way, actually. And so, yeah, I guess like if you're wanting to start the nonprofit, like doing the research to make sure that's really the right path for you, and then just talking to people, trying to find connections in whatever your community might be to have some of those conversations with folks.
Well, thank you. And thank you for also inadvertently, I'm not sure if you realize you said it, but you said, talk to me. So I'm just clarifying. Do you want people to come ask you questions?
Yes, always.
Hey,
definitely.
You heard it here, folks. Sierra, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. And we have never met in person, Sierra and myself. We've just sort of orbited each other on the internet for like 6 or 7 years. And so it's a pleasure to put a face with the name. The face is talking to me and not just like on the internet. So thank you for being here. I am going to probably hound you for links if I can't find them, because these show notes are going to be lit up. Y'all know where to look. Okay. And do you have a separate Instagram for Full Out Formula?
Yes. Yeah. Full Out Formula. Okay. That's the Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. People can follow that as well.
Okay. And then they can come see one of the 20 renditions that is sure to come.
Yeah.
Of I think this will work. Or I think it will work. I think it will work.
I think it could work.
I think it could work. Okay. It's a great title. I absolutely love it. Well, thank you so much, Sierra.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It's awesome to meet you. I love what you do too. Thanks for doing what you do.
Thank you. Oh, and I want to repeat while we're wrapping up, they have people have until December 31st to contribute to the fundraising effort of this year for CSAW. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Show notes, people. It's all in the show notes. Thank you, Sierra. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Rachel.
That's it for us today, my friends. Thank you so, so much for tuning in. Always, always grateful that you choose to spend this time listening to me and today listening to Sierra. If you have requests for future guests or future podcasts, you can always reach me on Instagram at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of my amazing patrons who stand with me and make this and so much more possible for me. Could not do it without you. Until next time, my friends, start small, stay warm out there, and don't go back to sleep.